Welcome to this episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. I'm Aric.
And I'm Angie.
We are married with a ton of kids.
We have 6 kids total. He has 3 and I have 3.
My name's Hallie and I love riding horses.
I'm Lexi and I love agriculture.
My name's Carter and I love eating.
My name's Chase and I love lifting weights.
My name's Summer and I love spending my parents' money.
I'm Dane and I love baseball.
Our show is about our blended, blessed, and always a mess life. And our hope is if you find yourself in the same situation we are in, that by sharing our story, all the fun and all the mess, the challenges we are experiencing, it will give you some inspirations, laughs, and community, knowing you are not alone in this mess.
We appreciate you spending time with us. Let's dive in.
This episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess is sponsored by the children's book Feathers Matter. As our kids grow up, they face challenges in their life, and knowing their self-worth and their value is crucial to face the headwinds. Purchase this beautiful story to read to your kids and grandkids and start the conversation with them at a young age. They are worthy, they matter, and their feathers matter. You can find the link to order on our blendedblessedalwaysamess.com page. Mention code #blessed for an autographed copy. Welcome to this week's episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess, where I'm really glad that Angie's going to take over most of the topic because sometime last night I got a sore throat. So if I sound a little froggy, she's been getting me these really good throat teas. I didn't even know they made such a thing, but Angie had them. They're tasty. So I'll be sipping on that as we go. And we'll kind of just touch on what we talked about last week, is that you were going to be gone to a work event. And so kind of led into the topic for today.
Yeah, we had our first sales kickoff meeting in over 5 years, thanks to COVID. But we did have over 2,000 people come together in Orlando. And I kind of honestly dreaded it a little bit. I don't know if you guys ever have the situations like that where it's like, you know, it's going to be great, but then there's this angst around, like, we would just be on the entire time because it's like all day, all night type of thing. And plus being gone all week. I don't like going that long without seeing my kiddo. So I left on Sunday night and didn't get back till Friday. And also then that following weekend they were with their dad. So that's way too long for this mama to go without seeing her kids.
And I would just add that you usually by 5 o'clock are exhausted, right?
Yes.
So to have to go all day and then all night, extra levels for sure.
Definitely, because I get drained way easier than what I used to, and I try to be protective over my time and sleep just to ensure that I feel strong getting up to kind of face the day. So there was also that aspect of it of like, oh gosh, I'm going to be so exhausted. I don't know if I'll be able to even function. But what I didn't expect was the amount of love and hugs that I would receive from people, because it's basically a virtual company. It's a global technology company. And so I work from home and, you know, I'm on calls all the time. It's so many of the people that I interact with, I don't ever really see in person. And so I had the opportunity of everybody to come together live. And, you know, a lot of the people that were there hadn't seen me since I lost Hallie. So I really didn't expect that. I had a lot of people just stop me and like give me a big hug. There was one guy that had reached out to me right after I lost Hallie, worked at Worldwide. I really didn't know him, but he knew loss as well. And we were actually at Thursday night, we were at Universal Studios walking around. We all have name tags on, but he stopped me. He was like, Angie, and just like gave me this huge hug. You just know the hugs are different from the people that know. And he's like, it's Guy McDonald. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because we connected because of our loss. And so it was multiple hugs, and you see each other. You see the pain, and you know what it feels like. But that part was amazing too. I mean, obviously the conference was great, and it just gives you a sense of the culture and the company that we work for. And so that part was really awesome, just to have that energy all come together in one big room. The other thing that I will say is that people feel bad, I think, if they talk to you and share their prayers and thoughts with you, if you tear up. But I just want to keep reiterating that just because someone tears up, like, that's not a bad thing. It's actually not. It's actually like positive, and that most of the time when I tear up when people say something to me, it's because it warms my heart to know people care, especially as time goes on. I mean, it just naturally happens less. And I think people think because you're functioning and you're there and you're smiling and you're laughing and have a good time, that them saying that they're thinking about you and you get teary-eyed means that they brought up something that you didn't remember, you know?
We've talked about that you're like, you never forget.
I just want to remind people that, like, don't be afraid of someone getting teary-eyed. Like, a lot of times they get teary-eyed because they feel the love that people have for them. So anyway.
I was sharing with some people last night at an event that I was working that it's we all want for Hallie to be remembered. So it's okay to talk about it and to see the tears because we want people asking about her and to know that people are still caring and thinking about it. And so I thought it was really neat that you were able to get so many people that you hadn't seen in so long, great conversations and the hugs and all of those things. And I think that's a great point you make about it. It's okay to see the tears because you say to me all the time, I never forget.
No.
And then it's true. And then I will be in the middle of the day and I'll even forget as her husband that like she hasn't forgotten. Right. So it's like we're going through the day and it's like, okay, things maybe feel normal, but that's normal to me. It's not normal to Angie because she's still feeling the pain. And so she never forgets. So we appreciate all the thoughts. I messaged you when you got there and I was like, Hallie showed up for you at all? Because I just felt like she was going to.
Yeah, she definitely did. It's funny because we had that podcast 2 episodes ago just talking about the signs from Hallie. And sometimes I think people probably think, is she full of shit? Like, does she really get that many signs? But we stayed at the Gaylord Hotel, which it's a massive conference center. Massive.
I always think it's like Opryland when you say Gaylord, but you were not in Nashville. You were in Orlando. Right, so not the Gaylord Opryland Hotel.
They have many properties.
Yeah.
This one's in Orlando. And, anybody want to guess what floor we were on?
Ooh,
all the rooms and floors.
Give me a 7.
Yes. Shocking. 7th floor. My room was 7379. And that wasn't the only sign. That was a small sign.
Sure.
Small sign. But she came in hot again, like she always does. Only this time other people got to witness it. But on Thursday night, after a whole week of eating conference food, it's not amazing.
Never great, right? Yeah.
Not amazing.
Sorry, Gaylord.
The company, they did a great job it's hard to make good food for that many people, but we decided to go down to Universal Studios early because they had rented out like a whole section just for us. And we decided to go down there early, a group of us, to grab something to eat, real food, and then go to Universal. So quite a few of us Ubered down there. We get down to City Walk, which is like a whole bunch of restaurants right outside of Universal, and thought, oh, sushi sounds good. So we try to get to the sushi restaurant. It was an hour and 45-minute wait. Then we try the restaurant next to them, not taking any reservations. They're full. Nobody can get in. We go to the next one, same type of deal, no room. So then we're like, okay, let's just divide and conquer. There was 4 of us in our group, and just go see what you can find. And so I went to the next restaurant, which was like an Italian restaurant, and of course, no room. But she's like, you could check the bar. There might be spots at the bar. So I go to the bar and there is like 4 spots around the corner of the bar. So I text the group and said, hey, come back to this Italian restaurant. I have seats for us. So they come in, sit down. Waitress comes over. I look at her name tag and her name is, I didn't know. It was Halle. So
that could be a lot of things.
It could be a lot of things. It could be Haley. It could be Hallie. So I asked her, how do you pronounce your name? And she said, well, it's Hallie. But a lot of people call me Haley, so I answered to both, but it's really Hallie. I'm like, okay, of course it is. So I didn't say anything else to her. The group with me were like, oh, God, I didn't even notice that was her name. And so anyway, I let time go past, and she ends up coming out of the bar and checking on some tables by us. So I just stopped her, and I said, hey, do you have a second? I want you to take your picture with me. She's like, okay, sure. She was real bubbly. So she stands next to me, but I'm like, well, you have to stand so your name tag shows, and I'll tell you why in a second. So we take this picture, and then I show her my wrist that I have Hallie's name tattooed on it. And I said, this is my daughter's name. It's also Hallie, but I lost her a year and a half ago. And so it's just, you're my sign from her that she's still with us. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'll be your adopted daughter for your dinner. It was just real bubbly. But when she was behind the bar earlier, I had noticed her tattoos on her arm. And there was just such a pool. I knew I had to ask her about her tattoos. I didn't know why, but I just knew. Like, I almost felt like Hallie was saying, ask her, Mom, ask her. Like, there was just this constant, like, push to ask her about her tattoos. So we were talking for a little bit, and I said, okay, tell me about your tattoos. I mean, I just knew I had to ask her. Because the one was Latin and it said memento mori. And I'm like, what does that mean? And she said, it means remember death or remember that you must die. And she goes, that's a reminder that I have to live. Which is so crazy because that's kind of what I hear Hallie saying. Like, I just hear her, oh my God, Mom, just, I'm fine. I'm okay. Like, you need to live. But then she also had a butterfly above that. And I'm like, okay, because, I got a bird tattoo on my other wrist and wrote Feathers Matter, which is about bird losing feathers. So she's got this butterfly on it. And she's like, well, the butterfly has a broken wing. So anybody understand the significance here?
I mean, I'm excited to find out.
I mean, she was like, it's also a reminder that we're all broken. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I show her my tattoo. I tell her about writing Feathers Matter. Showed her a picture of Hallie on my screensaver. And this girl had really dark hair. And she goes, if there's anything to add to it, she goes, I also used to have blonde hair, which Hallie had blonde hair for a long time. And then right before she crossed over, her hair was really dark. So it was just wild. Like, it blew the minds of the group that I was with. They're like, you have got to be kidding me. I'm like, no, like, this is what happens to me.
And it does. It's regular, and it is. I knew Hallie was going to show up. I think even that afternoon I said something about it too. We were on the phone and you were ready to go. And just, I had like a feeling at work that Hallie was going to be working that evening near you. But
butterflies have so much significance if you guys really like think about it. They go through so much darkness as they're in the cocoon, right? Mm-hmm. It's not light. It's completely dark in there. And in time, they see the light and they become something beautiful. So it's kind of like your word that we talked about last week on the podcast was rebirth. I mean,
can I say it?
You can say it.
Rebirth.
Oh my gosh.
All capital letters. Okay. Sorry.
So we do talk a lot about on this podcast. God. Isn't your throat sore? Should you just not talk? We talk a lot about changing, evolving, becoming on this podcast. I mean, to me, that is why we are all here. And it was also very soul-filling when we had a keynote speaker this last week that I really want to share with you guys because it hit home for me with everything that we continually talk about. Obviously, this was through a sales lens in a lot of ways to inspire the entire company to take on 2024. But a lot of it resonates with your day-to-day. And so if you have not heard of Molly Fletcher, I had not heard of her before, but she was our keynote speaker. She's basically the male version of Jerry Maguire. So
show me the money.
Exactly. She knows everything about sports, been in the sports business for 20 plus years, and she sports agents for many well-known male and female athletes, broadcaster, coaches, you name it. But she's recently turned into more of a motivational speaker because she wants to share everything that she has learned. She also has a podcast called Gamechangers, which I've listened to a couple of them, and they're really interesting. I mean, she has top people on her podcast, so definitely check that one out. But her whole talk track is like her entire life. She's been fascinated with what makes peak performers. And which, if you think about it, it's not just athletes, right? Like, you could be a peak performer in your life, but what does people have? What traits do people have that make them go through life seemingly smoother? It's not that they don't have challenges. Everybody has challenges, but what are those like key takeaways from what makes them successful? And you can term what successful means to you.
I think that's a great topic, and I can't wait for you to dive into it because I think, I know even like with some of our kids, they just say, well, that person's just lucky or they got blessed or, other kids I talk about or hear about. And a lot of times, let's just use athletes because they're easy, right? You're like, oh, Michael Jordan was just gifted. No, he actually worked hard. They would tell you he worked harder than every single person at practice, before practice, after practice. Same with Yadier Molina if you're a St. Louis Cardinals fan. He outworked every single person to be the best that they were. So it's what you're saying that she's talking about. How do these peak performers become the best of the best?
And it could be, because I'm not a sports nut, so I don't actually love the sports analogies. Sure. Because to me, like I said, plug in whatever you want. Best mom, best wife, best,
writer
in your faith, like you name it. How do people get through life? That's really what everybody wants to know. So I'm going to share some of these with you. I'll just kind of run through the list because I took a bunch of notes. I jotted down like key things that she said that resonated with me. But the first thing she started off with was peak performers believe that discomfort brings growth. So think about this. Like my kids struggle with this. I struggle with this. When they get uncomfortable and make mistakes and get that feedback, they don't embrace that it's the understanding that actually brings them closer to where they want to be, not further away. So if they don't make mistakes, then they don't learn. But that mentality is, I made a mistake, I must suck, I think I'll quit. So flipping that mantra, it's the same for me of like, I could sit in the why me, why'd this happen to me, and completely stop, right? But I also know that living in this hell has brought me more growth than I could have ever imagined in my faith and just every aspect of my life, my mindset around it. So I don't know how you necessarily teach this to the kids. Like I think they have to keep experiencing it and they have to evolve their mindset, but discomfort is actually good.
I mean, yeah, it could be like, let's talk about when you work out. When you work out and you have to like lift weights or do a movement that's maybe not comfortable for you, it takes a little while to get there. But that's how you start to lift more weight or become more flexible or to see the results you want. And it's a discomfort in that growth process.
Right.
I'm just using that because all of our kids work out.
Right.
So maybe,
For sure. They also, peak performers also anticipate the gaps in their lives. So they don't believe that they have it all figured out. So they're curious around areas to improve and they seek out those gaps rather than like staying with what they know. So they're constantly asking themselves, like, what are they missing? What can they do better? They recognize the value of curiosity. So she talked a lot about this, a lot about curiosity. So it kind of reminded me also about grief in that I was really curious about the stages because I wanted to know how I could get through that. I knew I had never been through something like this before, and I wanted to understand it and know that I have major gaps in my understanding of what all this is going to be. So always be curious, even when it's the worst of the worst or you're really going through hard times. Be curious about what it does to you, how it makes you feel, how it impacts you, and understand where those gaps are.
Makes me think of Ted Lasso.
Yeah, be
and
curious, not
scene.
judgmental.
Yeah. That's really good. I think curious people are more successful because they're willing to try things and fail.
I don't love the word successful, but like they get to where they want to go because success is something definitely, like I feel like it can be viewed as like, oh, well, they make a lot of money or they do this. But it's where do you want to go? How do you get where you want to go and measure it based on that versus success? It also feels like it's like a one and done. So that gets me to my next point is that the peak performers are in pursuit of getting better. So it's not the drive to win that matters. It's the focus on growth. So that's winning, like growing and getting better every day is what they're seeking out. So she also had this phrase that talent will get you there, but it won't keep you there. And drive is what's going to keep you there. So think about like how that relates to your life too. you can be skilled, but if you don't keep up that drive and that constant pursuit of getting better, you'll land and that's it. You won't expand. And it's kind of like I think about faith too. Like you can have strong faith, but if you don't constantly work on that drive of getting better and continually knowing God, understand where your gaps are, you're gonna lose in a lot of ways, right? It's like a continual pursuit.
The same with relationships, friendships, all those things, right? If you're not continuing to work on them and pursue them, then you don't see the fruits of it.
Complacency is the enemy of success. So if you think you've landed, you've made it, you're successful, and you don't constantly have that drive, or flipping it to going through a challenging situation and you think, well, I've healed, or at least I've been successful blocking that out, so I'm good. You're not good, because the enemy thrives on complacency versus that constant growing, that constant healing. Like, I don't feel like you're ever done healing. I don't. Like, I feel like the world sends so much your direction that there's this constant churn and things that are happening to you that hurt your heart. So I just don't feel like you're 100%, oh, I've healed. I don't think it works that way. I think I will always have this place in my heart that hurts. I don't think that's going to go away. I think what I wrap around that hurt and heartache is what's going to keep us growing and moving forward. Another thing that she talked about is be relational, not transactional. So obviously it was geared towards sales or athletes and trying to stay connected to people, but it's the power of connection. But if you take that to your own personal lives, that power of connection is far more important than anything you can actually transact on. So be present, connect with people. That's what matters. And for me, sometimes that's the hardest thing for me to do is I connect with a lot of people, but being present is extremely difficult for me because my mind is always running. And I still feel like it's in this like flight or fight mode constantly. And so that was a great reminder for me. She said, be where your feet are. And I'm like, oh, that's so good. Like, be where your feet are. Wherever you are, that's where you need to be and be fully present there instead of your mind being somewhere else, which, gosh, I mean, we're all guilty of that.
All guilty, yeah, for sure. But it's a great reminder to work on that and to be present in wherever you are in that moment.
Yes. Another area of focus, which we talk a lot about this, is asking yourself who deserves my energy. And she talked a lot about people manage time. Like we always talk about time management and your calendars and where are you going to block your time and who you're going to focus on. But she said peak performers really they're not focusing on time. They're focusing on energy. Where are they going to give their energy? We look at it all the time, right? When are we available? What are we going to do next? What's that checkbox? All of that. But if you look through energy and you're focused in that lens, it changes your perspective on how you spend your time. Another area that she alluded to that makes peak performers widely successful is that they recover faster from adversity. So setbacks, they recenter quickly and lock in.
I have to work on it.
They don't let setbacks keep them down. And that, I don't know, after reviewing like her list and my notes, I feel like that should be at the higher up on the list.
I really struggle with it. That whether it's at work, whether it's at home, I mean, I struggle with that. If I'm set back in some way, it's like a guilt and shame overtakes me that I have somehow messed something up or hurt somebody's feelings or whatever that looks like. And then I get stuck in that instead of, all right, get right back on the horse and start putting it back together. And yeah, I'm with you. That almost needs to be higher on the list of like when something goes wrong.
Because think about it. Like I would challenge you to think about like when you face adversity, when you face challenges, what is your process to recover from that, to recenter, to lock back in on where you want to go, on what growth looks like for you, right? Like that discomfort, what do you do? What is your process to lock back in?
I don't have one. Do you?
Well, I do a lot of thinking. So I don't know if I have a certain process, but I do feel like when I have setbacks, I naturally think about like, what do I do next? Where do I go from here?
I can see that.
I'm always thinking about a game plan, but I also feel like when I think through things or I have things I want to accomplish, I do think about a plan B or C or, how, if this doesn't work, what do I do next type of thing.
She's a thinker. I mean, you are.
So I don't know if that is helpful, but yeah, I mean, it's get back up.
Get back up.
Get back up.
Keep punching.
They also, it was interesting too, because she shared that peak performers appreciate the grind. They actually love the grind. They love that grit and they love putting in the work where, I've noticed it some in our kids too. It's like they want to be successful, but they don't necessarily want to put the work in. And it's like, how do you shift that mindset to appreciate the work, to love the grind, that they know that they're getting better?
I would just point out that
actually builds the confidence, is like doing it over and over again. That 1,000 times over is how you get confident. You don't get confident by being complacent or not appreciating the grind and putting the work in.
You very kind in that you referenced our kids, but you also had a conversation with me this week that I that I tend to do the same thing at times. So you were very kind to not mention it, but I will bring it up and just say that you are correct in that I also sometimes will avoid the grind. It's like I want to do it, but then the grind part, that's the...
Yeah, I have noticed that in you.
I appreciate you leaving it out. She called it out when it was just her and I.
It up.
But since
You want that quick. You want to... I think for you...
I like a good instant gratification, yes.
Well, no, I mean... You are a naturally talented person. You have a lot of talent. But I also feel like, and we've shared this before, like you're not living up to your potential. You are not challenging yourself to the level of potential that you can be. It's like you naturally had the talent in all things, whether it's sports, coaching, your voice, the radio, sales, like all of that. Like you have a ton of talent, just like we see in our kids. But then if you don't appreciate the grind and having that vision of where you need to go and focusing in on that, then you're complacent, right? Like all of these things can fall into that category. And I think even as parents, that's probably the hardest thing to see, is when you see your kids have this talent and then they're not taking advantage of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
The last thing, obviously, we talk about this all the time, but is self-talk.
Back to me again.
This podcast is really for you.
She's dropping all this on me at the end.
You have to watch your self-talk. What story are you telling yourself? And only you can control that. So this is a very interpersonal type of thing. But she talked about Kobe Bryant and the Mamba mentality of like, he just focused on getting a little better every day, being prepared and doing it 1,000 times over. And in his mind, it's like, what's one more time of doing it? Like just that grind. But you have to watch the story that you're telling yourself. What are you telling yourself? I'm not good enough. Okay, well then you have to do some inspection. Well, why am I not good enough? Am I putting in the work? Am I being complacent? Am I not?
Or like I've talked about before, the book I read earlier, this summer soundtracks, like, is this helpful? Is this self-talk even helpful? Is it true?
Right.
Yeah, all of those kind of questions.
It's your mindset and the story that you're telling yourself in all aspects of life. So I hope you guys found this to be helpful. I found it to be extremely helpful. These are types of notes that I go back and review often, or also like share with my team or share with the kids. Don't think they're not going to hear. These are going to get pulled out at random times. So I love the little one-liners. I mean, I said that to one of the kids this week. I'm like, input equals output. Like what you're putting into it. Because we have one kiddo that doesn't have a good grade in the class. And it was all these excuses. I'm like, no, you're not trying hard enough. Do you feel like you were doing the best that you could be? Yeah. Okay. Are you studying after school? No. Okay. Input equals output. The work you're putting in is a direct relation to what comes out. So you're not working hard enough. Oh my God, he studied for one test, got 10 out of 10. No shit. No shit.
You know what they always say? Excuses are like assholes. They all stink and everybody's got one.
Okay.
So I said that this week. And I said that this week. And Michael Agnew, who's been on the podcast, said the same thing. His coaches always told him the same thing about excuses. I mean, it's how it is. It's true.
So go check out Molly Fletcher's Game Changer podcast if you want to kind of see what her talk track's all about. But yeah, it was a good week. I got a good signs from Hallie and was also glad to be home.
She was exhausted.
I was so exhausted. Came home Friday, took a 3-hour nap, which is totally not like me at all. Went to Carter's senior night and then went to bed and woke up at 8 o'clock the next morning. So
also not like her at all.
It was totally draining, but worth it with the hugs and support and just being connected with people.
Super glad to have you back. And this was really helpful, I thought. So look forward to kind of diving deeper into this as well. Thanks for carrying the podcast since my throat hurts, and appreciate you. And
oh, you're welcome. I got you.
And we hope you guys have a wonderful week, and God bless. Thank you for listening to Blended Blessed and Always a Mess. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and at blendedblessedalwaysamess.com.
Reach out to us on any of our social channels. We would love to hear from you. Have a great week.